Good morning. I'm Senior Atmospheric Scientist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story. Today is Thursday, March 6th, 2025. I'm coming to you a day later than I typically do during the week, and I'm going to explain why that was. It was weather-related here, but just to show you your bullet points here, we do have pockets of light snow across the prairie here. Nothing really all that disruptive, nothing all that significant over the next 72 hours, but there will be some snowflakes flying. We're going to see those temperature swings continue over the next 10 days. It is mild now. We have some colder air that is available to kind of be tugged down by a couple of these storm systems that will be tracking across the prairie over the next 5 to 10 days. Then we do have some new seasonal forecast data. I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but I want to give a bigger update on that next week. I've kind of just been digesting it over the last 12 to 24 hours, and it's got an optimistic look here this spring, but I want to dive into that a little bit more over the next 5 days or so just to understand why it's saying that and what my confidence level should really be with that. Now, again, the reason that I'm coming to you a day later, I had to do some work travel yesterday. I am in Michigan today talking to some folks here, some Nutrien folks today. I'll be talking to them tomorrow as well in the Sparta and Holland, Michigan area. So that means I had to drive from Illinois, where I reside, up here to Michigan. Pretty short drive, about 4 to 5 hours, but it kind of rounds the bend here with Lake Michigan. And if you're aware, paying attention to the forecast, we had a big disruptive storm making its way through the central and eastern U.S. yesterday. Really over the last 3 to 4 days. Brought some severe weather to the south, blizzard conditions to the plains, parts of the upper Midwest, and altogether a ton of high winds. We had winds that were gusting 50 to 70 miles per hour. Using the American system there, I apologize for that, but we're talking about wind gusts that were getting up to about 100 kilometers per hour, wrapping around the backside of this storm system. So here's about the time that I was doing my traveling yesterday. We get toward the evening, late in the day. So what we had was really strong winds wrapping around the backside of the system, and then precipitation that started as rain and was transitioning over to sleet and then eventually some snow. So I had a drive ahead of me that I knew well and was not going to be all that hard, but it was going to be accompanied by 60-mile-an-hour winds, and the later that it got into the day, the higher the risk that precipitation was going to become frozen. So I needed to spend my day getting on the road and doing some travel. I made it safely here to Grand Rapids, but this was the front of my beloved Subaru Forester as I pulled in. I do have a license plate here that you should be able to read. The front of my car was just completely caked in ice. So the total precipitation was not all that significant, and the driving was, not all that tense either. There were some moments there where I was gripping the steering wheel as we were doing some sideways snow, but that temperature is creeping below freezing, and I am glad that I left when I did. I rolled in at about, 10 or 11 p.m. I had kind of thought that I would kick the video out the door when I got settled into the hotel, but I just kind of got to thinking I'd probably give you guys a better forecast if I just get a good night's sleep and don't sit down. And also, by the time you all watch this morning, the forecast data would be 12 hours old anyway. So let's get into it. I'm safe in Michigan, a little bit closer to the Canadian border here today, feeling the effects of this system here. Just still quite cold and windy outside today. I had to run outside already to my car. Nothing like that across the prairie right now. It's pretty quiet as far as precipitation goes. Temperature is a bit on the chilly side this morning, a little cooler as you head east and north. It's downright cold as you get into central portions of Manitoba, northern Saskatchewan there north of the prairie, but generally a few degrees below freezing, and we're down to minus 15, minus 16 in some parts of southeastern Saskatchewan and southwestern Manitoba this morning. Again, the precipitation is quiet across the prairie here, and there will be some pockets of flurries, but generally nothing disruptive, nothing all that significant with precipitation over the next several days, really through the weekend. We have a little disturbance that's going to be sneaking through the northern plains, bringing a couple of inches of snow, but that one is not going to be impacting the prairie. Better chance for some noticeable snow is going to be as we get into next week across the Canadian prairie. So total precipitation split up by type. Rain up top, nothing really liquid precipitation, worthy to talk about. Just some light snow. Some light snow north of Highway 16. And then eventually, as we get toward the back half of the weekend, maybe into early next week, Calgary, Grand Prairie, Peace River, maybe looking for some snow across those areas as well. The pattern is becoming very active. We're seeing that transition from winter into springtime. The jet stream is active. We have lots of storm systems that are making their way in. In the short term, it's not that active across the prairie. Many of these disturbances, if you can kind of visualize a little bit better, are kind of breaking off here and then making their way across the western U.S. and then eventually the southern U.S. So the bigger high-impact storms right now are kind of tracking from the southern plains in the U.S. into the Midwest and eventually the Great Lakes. Across the prairie, we get a couple of these little disturbances kind of, following the polar branch of the jet stream here, bringing in some light doses of snow. The bigger impact is the temperatures right now. We're going to see mild temperatures and then eventually a colder tug as we get into middle and later next week. So we're seeing that, springtime volatility with our temperatures, nothing all that unusual. And as I look out into the near term and I talk about these colder shots of air, right now I'm not seeing anything long-lasting and significant. Not talking about, 4 to 5 day long extreme cold warnings, just your typical seasonal fluctuations with those temperatures. Now, I mentioned the pattern is going to be a bit more active, bigger storm systems south of the region, lighter systems kind of tracking through the prairie. Now, what does that look like? We'll just kind of roughly time it out. Here's your end of the week today. This is Friday morning. We're starting off with that system down across the northern plains, quiet across the prairie. Here's your Friday evening, your Saturday, and then we get into your Sunday. Again, on Sunday night, Monday, we do have a pretty tightly wound little system that will be bringing some blustery winds. You'll see your temperatures be impacted there, and we'll get some light precipitation across the region as we head through the day on Monday as well. This is your Tuesday, March 11th. Now Wednesday, getting into Thursday. Again, you're seeing these bigger systems kind of organizing across the Rockies and then making their way into the central United States. Looks something like this. This would be next week, and we're seeing the models really go pretty hard after a pretty big storm system. And what can happen is these can wrap up and then they lift northeast. We can get some heavier precipitation at times, especially the further east that you go. This is the kind of pattern that can deliver some of these really big storm systems to southern portions of Manitoba, sometimes clipping southern and southeastern portions of Saskatchewan. Not saying that's going to happen in the next 10 days, but this is that type of pattern where we can get clipped by some of these bigger storm systems if we keep the pattern rolling, which the models seem to want to do, and the seasonal forecast continues to back that up as well as we head deeper into March and then eventually April. So let's look at the European model, kind of zoomed in on Canada. We'll look at this by type here as well. Quiet in the near term through Friday, Saturday, and then as we get into Sunday and Monday, here's that area of low pressure that could bring some snow and some blustery winds to the area, primarily Sunday night into Monday as I kind of rock back and forth. Peace River, Grand Prairie, Calgary, you'll get some snow out of this. Highway 16, you'll get some snow out of this as well. You get closer to the border of the U.S., a little bit lighter precipitation with this one. There are more storms that follow, though. Here's a little clipper and kind of disorganized system here on Tuesday. I should not call that a clipper. It doesn't really, do the clipper thing. It's just a kind of a disorganized system. Look at this big area of low pressure coming in, though, late next week. This is Wednesday into Thursday. This one triggers a much more significant storm system in the central United States, but here you go. This is what I'm talking about. Right on that north edge, we can get in on some of the precipitation. This is a much more favorable precipitation pattern, in the vicinity of the Canadian prairie. This is not one that's going to be sending storm after storm through the prairie, but this is getting us much closer to that favorable pattern. And hey, I'm not going to discount a more significant snowfall here over the next 2 weeks across southern Manitoba and southeastern portions of Saskatchewan with a pattern like this. Again, let's just bring it back. Quiet in the near term, again, through the weekend. Get some Sunday, Monday snow from Calgary across Highway 16. Pretty quiet to start off next week, but then we get into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's going to be a bit more active here. We may have more in the way of significant precipitation to talk about. Again, as you look at the next 15 days verbatim from the European AI forecast system, it's not all that exciting. Peace River, Grand Prairie, you got the opportunity for an inch or more of precipitation, 30 millimeters or more of precipitation here, some significant snow. Same is true across Highway 16. We're talking about 5 to 15 millimeters, the chance to get some accumulating snow. You get closer to the U.S. border, it's going to be a little harder to do that. But then check out Manitoba. Get into that orange and yellow shading there. The models are picking up on the potential for some of these systems to lift across the prairie, and you're seeing the forecast go after 30 to 40 millimeters of precipitation, an inch plus. I just don't have high confidence in the storm comes in Thursday, March 15th or something like that. It's just we're starting to get some teasing here with a pattern that could be favorable for precipitation, kind of this backloaded late winter, early spring run that we've been kind of hoping for. Another one zoomed out, European AI forecast system. Again, your next 15 days, it's not all that exciting, but the pattern is starting to, it's opening up across North America here. So I think we just need to kind of sit and wait for a couple of weeks, maybe not quite so long before we get high confidence and maybe get a system or two to kind of come in here. What I'm saying is I feel good about the chance that we're going to see a pretty significant storm system or two here making its way through parts of the prairie, probably southern and eastern parts of the prairie, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. I feel better about that. Alberta, I'm getting too nuanced here at this point. I need to just tell you that as we get into March, later March into April, the long range guidance is pretty favorable for a run of, wetter than average conditions across a lot of the prairie. We just got to wait till we get a little closer and I get some confidence in the details on when. So from my backyard here across the Midwest up to the Canadian prairie, this is kind of where the models are going after that more active springtime storm track. So right now, I just feel pretty good saying that it doesn't look like the ridge across the southern U.S. just, blossoms and sends the jet stream super far north right away in the springtime. Now, that may happen as we get deeper into the summer. This is June, July, August from the European seasonal forecast. Take this with a grain of salt. We're talking about a forecast in the 3 to 6 month range, so we're just looking for some clues here and some patterns. And, there is some guidance here that across the board suggests we could see, higher chance for hotter and drier conditions across the prairie this summer. So we'll want to bank some precipitation here just to feel a little bit better about that this springtime. And right now the forecast guidance is fairly optimistic for that. So let's just finish with your temperatures. Again, mild the next 4 to 5 days. We do have a shot of cooler air coming in next week, but temperatures still getting above freezing in most cases here in Calgary. Through next week, although a bit cooler, Edmonton, you'll cool down as well. Again, those temperatures between 5 and 8 degrees in the afternoon. Through the weekend, a bit cooler as we get into next week. Saskatoon, very similar look here as well. Regina, again, a shot of colder air, but this is not a long-lasting shot of bitterly cold, dangerously cold weather. Just your typical springtime temperature fluctuations. Winnipeg, you'll be bouncing around quite a bit. -5 today, 6 on Sunday, -5 on Tuesday, back above freezing a couple days here as we get into next week. Have a wonderful week. I'll be back with you next Wednesday. We'll take a deeper dive into the long-range forecast.